Trans, Latin for across, beyond, or on the other side of. This one prefix carries the weight of a whole movement. Welcome to Shrimp Fried Rice. I'm Jack, and I'm going to be talking about Kim Longinado and Gianna Williams' Shinjuku Boys. I love media with trans characters. They're often underrepresented people, and as the LGBTQ+ gets more and more accepted and shown in media, there's still a significant lack of genderqueer characters on our screens. Longinado and Williams show us real trans people living in Japan in their documentary. Shinjuku Boys is a film about 3 trans men working at Club Maryland in Shinjuku, Tokyo. Club Maryland is a host club. For those who don't know, host clubs are a type of nightclub where women patrons pay men hosts who entertain them. Pouring drinks, singing karaoke, and flirting with the women, the hosts make their money building and maintaining relationships. The host club in Shinjuku Boys is referred to as an onabe club. Onabe is an outdated term for men who are assigned female at birth, or AFAB. It's since become widely regarded as a somewhat derogatory term to describe trans men, so I'm going to refer to them as FTM host clubs, as most people prefer that term in modern-day Japan. So this FTM host club in Shinjuku is specifically for transgender hosts. Tokyo is divided into 23 special wards, and Shinjuku is its busiest. With a population of nearly 350,000 and over 19,000 people per square kilometer, it's packed with commercial activity. It's also home to the Shinjuku Nichome area, which has the highest concentration of gay bars and clubs in the world. It's long housed a secret safe haven for queer people for decades. Working in a host bar was arguably one of the only safe career choices for a trans man in Japan at the time. Even though gender identity has been the subject of Japanese art for a while now, genderqueer people still weren't generally accepted in 1995 when this documentary was made. In fact, it was only in 2023 that transgender people were no longer forcibly sterilized in order to legally change their gender indication in Japan. So the Shinjuku area has stood out as a safe space for queer people to exist and even make a career. It's 1995 Shinjuku that we get a glimpse into. We meet 3 transgender men working as hosts at Club Maryland, Gaish, Kazuki, and Tatsu. The film chronicles their lives and problems as they live and work as trans men hidden in the Shinjuku clubs of Japan. Many patrons at FTM host clubs were just curious people. They wanted to see what was going on in there, and it was almost a game to dare your friends to check it out. However, there were also genuine patrons, and those people were regulars who wanted to be entertained by the boys, getting flirted with and becoming companions. Some clients were very invested in a host, calling them when they weren't on the clock and believing the host loved them more than just as an act. Hosting is not necessarily a manipulative role. These people know what they're signing up for when they show up to a host club, but it's hard to not let emotions get the best of you, especially when the guys are so good at their jobs. The hosts are never actually romantically involved with their customers, despite how attached a customer may get. There's often not any sexual activity either, it's much more a flirtatious companionship. The hosts are also not supposed to be in romantic relationships outside of the club, but as we see in the documentary, many still do. Kazuki is dating a trans woman who also works at a club. They're very cute together and make an effort to validate each other's gender identity.
お互いにそのね、分かり合えるところがありますよね。その上でお互いに同居的な感覚の上に恋愛がつくからうまくいくんじゃないかな。
Tatsu has a long-term cisgender girlfriend who he loves. They live and cook together, however are unable to get legally married. They can't have or adopt children. His girlfriend's family is upset by this, but she loves Tatsu all the same and couldn't care less about the issues imposed on them by society due to him being trans. Tatsu also takes testosterone. Hormone therapy is something the 3 have different takes on, but showing the diversity between transgender people is great, seeing as everyone is different and there's no one correct way to present one's identity. Kazuki, for example, does not personally feel the need to be on hormones, but presents very masculinely and identifies as a man. Gaish, on the other hand, does not see himself as a man or a woman. In today's world, he might better identify as non-binary or gender non-conforming, but we shouldn't really make assumptions on a real person's gender identity. Again though, seeing these different perspectives and identities is great for the film's audience. A big topic the 3 deal with throughout the film is marriage and sex. It's a bit of a complicated subject for all of them. Gaish and Tatsu speak about being embarrassed and ashamed of their bodies during sex, keeping their clothes on.
普通のお鍋って俗に言われる自分たちみたいなのだったら普通は例えばエッチするときに
自分も脱ぐだとか自分の体を見せることはすごく嫌がることだし
Kazuki and his girlfriend talk extensively about how they don't have sex. It was an issue at first for them, but over time became insignificant. They too can't get married or have children, but this is of little bother to them. They're happy together, and that's all that matters. Gaisha's first relationship was with his teacher when he was 15. After dating for a few years, the teacher broke up with him to marry a cis man because she'd be an outcast for dating a trans man. He was taken advantage of by an adult when he was so young, then cast aside by her. Because of this, he has such a complex relationship with himself and with marriage. He's got a complicated relationship with his family too, as they expectedly don't accept his lifestyle and identity. For the same reason, Kazuki hides his identity from his mother. However, by the end of the film, Kazuki tells his mother about his trans girlfriend and comes out to her as trans himself. And in a happy ending, she accepts him.
自分のさ生きてる間にね、嫌な思いして生きてることはないと思うよ。
いいことだ。
いやいいことなんてことないけどさ、そうだと思う。私はそう思うから、別にあなたがそうやって生きてるただ連絡をすること、
はいはい、
それは当たり前のことで、そういうことがばっかりあれしてちゃいけないわけ。
はいはい、
どうやってあなたがそうやって生きていきたければそうやって生きても構わないわけよ。ね、いけねえさとあなたやるし。
She may not understand it, but she wants her son to be happy and live a life he is proud of. I loved Shinjuku Boys. It's so intimately personal as we watch the charismatic personalities of the hosts interact with their customers, each other, and then just with us, in front of the camera. However, there's this layer of guardedness to the intimacy. Gaish in particular seems to be acting a callous and uncaring persona so that he can't get hurt again.
だからそういうお客さんに対して強く言う人、強く言うタイプ。で、タツクの場合は
These three all grew up dealing with so much discrimination from the world and from their families. They need to be protected and to feel safe. And the people that they are sometimes feel like a person that they have created. Someone safe and welcoming to other trans men. Someone confident and unfuckwithable by bigots. They've become someone they needed when they were young. It's sweet and peaceful with a hint of sadness, my favorite kind of art. It's such a cozy and comfortable documentary, it felt like something I had seen before. In fact, the whole film reminded me a lot of the show Ouran High School Host Club, which is something I shouldn't go into too much because it's an embarrassing part of my childhood. Ouran High School Host Club is a manga-adapted series about Haruhi Fujioka, a girl who works in a host club at her prestigious private school, very similar to the club in Shinjuku Boys. Rich boys dress up in suits and date girls who pay them for their services. Haruhi has to repay a debt to the host club, and after initially being mistaken for a boy, she ends up working there, dressing masculinely to conceal her gender from the clients. Haruhi is not canonically transgender or genderqueer, but because of her criticism of labels and disinterest towards whether people see her as a boy or a girl, many people consider Haruhi to be their introduction to questioning their gender, myself included. It was arguably the first piece of media I experienced with queer themes, and I don't seem to be the only one. Some consider her to be an icon to their gender identity. Unfortunately, the show is very dated and does not always have the best representation. It even uses some outdated terms that have become slurs. But the crumbs of genderqueerness are all there, lying in wait for the fans to pick up and project their own meaning onto Haruhi. Much deeper and more explicit than the show may have ever intended. I think it's very interesting that we have two pieces of Japanese media revolving around host clubs and gender identity. Although Shinjuku Boys is a bit more adult than Ouran, I kind of wish I had discovered it when I was younger. I think it would have been great to see more transgender representation and see and understand the struggles Gaish, Kazuki, and Tatsu go through in their everyday lives. Shinjuku Boys is a film full of trans men working at a host club and showing the audience who they are. Someone is finally asking them for their thoughts, and they are able to divulge how they feel about certain issues and insecurities. And even though Gaish, Kazuki, and Tatsu have dealt with hellish issues all their lives, there's a nice silver lining to it all. It's optimistic. They've found ways to be happy. They work in a safe place, living and expressing their identities. And most importantly, they finally have each other. After growing up so alone and misunderstood, they now have people who get them. The group hangs out together outside of work, making and having dinner together, laughing and joking. They've made their own family in the Shinjuku area. This would be a perfect film for a class on non-Western queer cinema. It portrays the trans culture of Japan in such an intimate yet defensive way, making use of its genuine documentary style. And my favorite part about this film is just how positive its message is. that despite all the bullshit, you can find a way to be happy and find people like you who have gone through what you've gone through. And by being together, you can start to find peace. Thank you.
よかったよかった。